The people that I've listened to for years are now really caught up in this Ukraine war talk. I'm going to give you the facts, and even if it's controversial, I'm going to double down on the sources and the reality of what's going on in the world. It's a bigger war than you know, and you're going to love this broadcast. Good morning, good afternoon, or possibly good night, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, but it's being filmed at the breaking of the dawn of the Great Awakening. And here we are on a new day with great things happening. I'm wearing my orange vest, for those of you that can see us in the podcast, and that's like my gunslinger vest. I always feel like a little bit like one of those 50s or 60s TV shows where the guy was wearing this kind of vest who was in the saloon, and it's usually the good guy. And so we're going to talk about good guys and bad guys because the news is suspiciously all one-sided on the Ukraine situation, which reminds me of the coronavirus, which reminds me of Russia collusion, which reminds me of January 6th. Therefore, I know it's flawed. So we're going to be looking at the other side of the story and hopefully not offending too many people. Welcome, Mercedes Sparks. Are you here with us?
Happy to be
Can
here.
I pry you away from your phone for a moment?
Do you know I'm trying to pull this article up that you sent me on the screen?
Oh, yes, I did send you an article.
So let's just button it up
and
like your
son,
vest
Carl,
there, my
I don't
friend.
know if he'll be speaking, and Jonathan down there. Jonathan, you will be called upon at any point, any moment to have to render an opinion, whether you feel comfortable or not. What number am I thinking about, Jonathan? Guess.
17.
Oh, 7, but you were close. Overshooting the runway. Stick with your first intuition. It was 7. Okay, now. We're going to be talking about there's one report here on my desk that I don't want to lose. I was going to do it in an earlier broadcast, didn't get it out. Need to get it out there now, and it has to do with, it's so frustrating. Where is it? Oh, here we go. It has to do with your tax dollars at work. Ukrainian officials keep getting caught fleeing the country with suitcases full of your cash and euros. Typical Americans all citing in the story that they're hearing about the Ukraine and hearing the, shall I say, dramatized and bipartisan version of it, are sending their money over there. The U.S. Senate just passed a bipartisan $1.5 trillion bill while we're struggling for breath to keep our economy from going under. And that included $13.6 billion for Ukraine. Chuck Schumer touted that the aid to Ukraine is a pressing reason for getting that $1.5 trillion through. He was desperate to get that $1.5 trillion. We got to help Ukraine, he said. So they pushed it through to get Ukraine that money. Meanwhile, the same week, inflation is now hitting 7.9%, the highest it's been possibly in your lifetime. And by the way, we're blowing past that ceiling with Biden's handling of relations with other nations. So what I want you to hear is this. The wife of a former Ukrainian MP, Ihor Kotivsky, declared $28 million and 1.3 million euros when entering Hungary. $28 million and 1.3 million. This is the wife of a Ukrainian MP. She's not the only one. Another Ukrainian diplomat tried to flee the Ukraine with 68,000 euro and $140,000 in 12 karat gold and 13.8 karat gold jewelry and a large number of cigarettes. Your tax dollars are at work. Remember this, Ukraine was listed as the 4th most corrupt country in the world. So when you're sending your dollars over there, make sure you know who the heck you're giving it to, because you might be shuffling it into a suitcase that's leaving the country.
You're saying that money that they're shoving in the suitcases is people who donated over there?
It's U.S. cash. It's euros and U.S. cash in obscene quantities, and it's going to suitcases. Because remember, you have the Ukraine was the largest contributor to the Clinton Foundation, which is why when Donald Trump said that he wanted to have evidence on Hunter Biden's corruption because of his work with Ukraine, they didn't come up with the information. And as we heard today from Laura Logan, when they tried to impeach Donald Trump, it was a woman from the State Department and a low-ranking lieutenant colonel that both went out to get the president impeached because he was interfering with them setting Ukrainian policy. See how the bureaucracy works? The president doesn't get to set policy unless you're Vice President Biden, who can throw the weight around in order to get the courts to not look at corruption that would implicate his son's money source at Burisma. So what I'm saying is, listen, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm saying that while you're thinking of helping out, remember, how many countries get money from the United States? You ever look at the budget of what the United States pays other countries? And where does it go? It goes into the hands and pockets of other people. I would love to do a complete forensic audit of the entire government foreign spending and see where our money goes and have the American people vote on it. Might have a whole different experience. So now let me come back to the Russian accusations. The Pentagon has reportedly spent $200 million on bioresearch in the Ukraine at numerous facilities. The Pentagon acknowledges the U.S. has spent $200 million on programs in 46 biolabs in the Ukraine since it launched by young Senator Barack Obama in 2005. So now they claim there are no Ukrainian biological weapons laboratories supported by the United States. But that's actually a little bit of a play on words, because there are no bioweapons labs supported. But if you are creating a weapon in the lab for the purpose of finding a vaccine, it is no longer called a bioweapons lab. It's called a biological research laboratory. And that's how the Americans are calling it now. And yet, the fact that they were worried about Russians getting a hold of those labs tells you there were weaponized biology in those labs. They were indeed playing around, just like in Wuhan, with bioweapons under the guise of coming up with vaccines. Now, why in the world you would do that in Ukraine and not, let's say, in London or in Italy or in France, where they have more sophisticated scientific? Ukraine isn't known for being scientists. The feeling is it was there because it was also a forward station of intimidation in the provocation of Russia, knowing that right on their doorstep there is a large nation that has numerous biological weapons, maybe not nuclear, but certainly enough to threaten Russia if they tried anything. And that's largely part of the sad mythology or truth around what Putin is claiming now, that he has found that these are laboratories with that reveal that America is still doing bioweapon stuff right on the doorstep of Russia. So what are we supposed to do with this, folks? Where do we go with this? And that's not the part that I find the most disturbing. While we're going into the back and forth on the Russia-Ukraine scenario, a lot of people don't realize this. A week ago, Mercedes, Putin had a rally, and there was various estimates as to how many people were there. Certainly, it was largely attended, probably more than 20, 30, 40,000 people. Some people say 100,000 or more. But Putin was there, and of course, it seemed to me that by all evidence, it looked like there was an enthusiastic response from the crowd. Now, this would strike many of the critics of Putin as disconcerting, and they tried to deny it. They said, oh, no, this is all fake. These people are government employees. They have to go out there. I don't believe it. I think Russia is rallying behind Putin. I think the United States, and again, because I think they've got 18-year-old woke millennials running the State Department and the White House policies. I think they're ignorant, and they don't know how the real world works. The moment that we decided to hit the average Russian who may not have liked the war, who may not have agreed with the war, but the moment that we cut off we dropped their economy, 30% devaluation in the ruble. The moment we cut off their cash flow, the banks freezing up. The moment we disrupted their goods and services, their food supply, and then went on to say not even your phone service, your credit card, Netflix, and the internet will work for you, Putin was able to fill the void with his propaganda and say they hate us. The godless West, in its decadence, hates us. And no matter what we do, we will not back down and we will not be broken. We will win this battle. Well, he has now, I bet you, has like a 90% approval rating. And where the sympathy was on our part and Ukrainians' part, we killed it. We killed it because I think the Bible does say something. There's a little bit of wisdom in this thing about when your enemy is hungry, you feed him. When he's thirsty, you give him something to drink. The principle being, you don't act merciless if you're trying to win the psychological warfare with your opponents. We are trying to win the Russian people to get rid of Putin. And what we did was we damaged the Russian people and they aligned with their leaders. So I'm just saying that, just read it for what it is. Putin is not going to be deposed because his people aren't supporting him. We have now given them a reason to rally with him, just like we gave Russia a reason to join China. Because if we're going to cut off Russia, then Russia, by the way, Russia and China are tired of being bullied by the United States. Now, I am no fan of the CCP. I see them as the greatest threat for America. But my gosh, if it's going to be this corrupt regime that puts our American citizens locked up after January 6th without due process, if it's going to be this lying regime that plants stories about Russian collusion in the intelligence community and in the media and then refuses to repent, recant, or explain it 2 years later when the facts come out that there was no Russian collusion, or the Hunter Biden laptop that they all exonerated, which we now know is a valid, and they affected an election by lying, the intelligence community. In other words, there comes a point where our government has such a systemic stench to its corruption that I find it hard, painfully hard, to defend this version of the United States on the world scene. I never was in this place before. I always fought to defend America. And now I'm in a place where I see it unclothed. And I say, where I never used to sympathize with other countries' arguments, I'm now looking at them twice. China does not want to be bullied by our sanctions. They want to be self-determined. Russia doesn't want to be controlled by our sanctions. No country does, frankly, because our sanctions are no longer reinforcements of moral authority. Catch this. When sanctions were used for moral authority, they had a kind of power to them. They were better than war by putting a discipline. It's kind of like, instead of using guns and bullets, we can cut the ATM card and the gas card and get the person to behave themselves. But you know what? If you're not a moral authority anymore, if you're a corrupt, perverted, promoter of your values, and your values from transgender to gay rights is anathema to the Russian culture that is Russian Orthodox, is not wanted in China, and is offensive to Muslims. How dare you continue to rub the world in the face with your wokeness? And that's where America's getting. It's getting to the point where I'm wondering if God Almighty isn't bringing America down a notch or two or three, because it's no longer fulfilling what it was called to do. It's now becoming, rather than evangelist for freedom, it's becoming a purveyor of perversion, and it's getting its appropriate pushback. It's losing its prestige globally. And I don't want to see that happen. I want to see America recover. But you know what it's going to take? We're going to have to win a big battle at home, because the country's going to have to see where it's at and accept it. By the way, you think I'm exaggerating? Disney, Pixar, is going to restore its gay kissing scene. Now, this isn't going to be in some movie for adults. This is in Toy Story. This is for your children. This is because the LGBTQ community got its nose out of joint because it didn't get its gay content into the kindergarten to 3-year-olds in the school district. So it intimidated the Pixar CEO into putting a gay kissing scene into Toy Story, the prequel. So now we're going to have a lesbian relationship, which will be for your girls out there to all get confused on women-to-women attraction. And that's going to be Disney's CEO, Bob Chapek's handling of the Don't Say Gay bill, which never was a Don't Say Gay bill. It had nothing to do with Don't Say Gay bill. It had to do with not trying to proselytize children with sexual, education at kindergarten to third grade. They don't need. Anyway, the kiss was taken out, but it's been put back. So you're going to have a same-sex affection scene following that other atrocity, which was what, Red? Or what's that movie is called?
Yeah, Turning Red.
Turning Red. And what was the deal with that for folks who didn't hear that broadcast?
Yeah, that one is just more so pretty much just directly a 13-year-old who's just really disobedient, lies to her mom, is dishonest. It has a lot of occult symbolism within it. It's got a lot of it's an actual spirit panda that enters her that she needs deliverance from, but she chooses to keep the panda inside of her. So there's a lot of like, if you're a Christian, there's overtones to it that there's a real spiritual side. You can't control it. And then the lying, the disobedience. And really, I mean, flying in the face of the commandment, honor your father and mother. I think it's like the third line in the movie. It says something like, you can honor people so much that you forget to honor yourself. You can honor your parents so much that you forget to honor yourself. And so, anyways, there's a lot of questionable things within that movie, but within all Disney movies, really. I mean, when the one redeeming thing about this movie is both of the parents are alive, I mean, it says a lot. So.
Yeah, the parents are alive, but then in one key moment in the scene, the parents are hoping that the child is happy that they have parents and that love them.
No, I'm saying that's like my daughter's takeaway. We had watched it. Unfortunately, we had seen it, and so we talked about it afterwards. And she's like, "Well, at least both of the parents were alive, because in everything, really, from Lion King, Ariel, they got a dead parent, and parents are always portrayed in Disney movies as either overbearing or incompetent, one of the two. You never rarely.
You never have a positive role model of a parent.
Yeah,
you guys are always dorks. It's like fathers in all sitcoms are idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're overbearing and they just don't understand you, and then therefore they have to run away from home. Like, it's like, will you really sit?
I thought there was a scene you told me about where
she runs away.
No. Listen.
Okay.
Where it's like, aren't you happy that you have your parents love you? And she looks to them like, yeah, but in her mind, she's really thinking of her own peer group.
Her peer group
are the people that she really loves.
Yeah, the only way to control the panda, like her emotions, because if she gets too much emotion, then the panda pops out. And the only way to control that is to think of your she realizes if she thinks of her friend group hugging her and loving on her, it calms her down. And her mom and her dad are kind of testing her to see if she can control her emotions. And they're like, well, what are you doing differently? And she's like, I just think of the people that I love the most. And the mom goes, you're thinking about your dad and I? And she's like, yeah, I'm thinking about you guys. But really, she's thinking about her friend group. So it's your friend group who really understands the authentic you. It's like your 13-year-old girlfriends or guy friends are not ride or die. They're not going to be there for the rest of your life. I mean, maybe through college.
All
maybe.
The whole point is it undermines the role of parents. This has always been kind of like the evil that has been in media. It undercuts parents. It's rare when you see fathers that are heroes and moms that are virtuous. And it's like this. It's just a weird.
Even in sitcoms. I mean, the last time I could think, like maybe Boy Meets World, maybe back then, where he had a community that was mentoring him and Sean and Mr. Feeney and the mom and the dad really wasn't a total boob. And so it's like that's the only time I could think. I remember being a show like that. But you're going back 25 years to even get to that. Carl's got his hand up over there.
Carl, do you have any?
I haven't seen Turning Red yet. I plan on watching it this week, so that way I can be a little bit more knowledgeable as for the points and the counterpoints against it. But I am reminded of the quote, "Blood is thicker than water." And so a lot of people will misconstrue that quote to talk about the importance and significance of family. But the full quote in its real context is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So the idea is that the people that you go through life with, you end up having a stronger bond with them than you do just your family ties. Like, for instance, a number of my friends, I'm far closer with them than I am with my cousins, for instance, even though we share lineage, we share genetics. So I think that might potentially be one of the things that they're pointing to in Turning Red. Also, for me, with having grown up learning about psychology, there is definitely a healthy separation between somebody who's coming of age, becoming a teenager, finding their own path, finding their own tribe, and actually kind of going out of the home in order to find those people. It's also definitely blatant in the monomyth template, where you have to leave your home in order to actually find yourself, and you have to go on that journey and that adventure. All that to say, I definitely completely agree with the point on Pixar and Disney always making the parents either absent or obsolete. You know, there really is no healthy 2-parent household that I've seen that I can point to in a Disney franchise.
Yeah. Or where the parents weren't the protagonist, like they're the problem. It's like with
Antagonist?
I don't know. You would know better than me. I looked it up the other day. I thought it was protagonist, but antagonist. But they're essentially the problem character in the show. And it's like I'm really hard pressed to go back and find a parent where it was like they helped guide the child to the right decision, which is really what a majority of parents do. You know, I mean, unless you've had really awful parents, and plenty of people do, most parents, and I don't even know if people I didn't fully understand how much my parents loved me until I had my own kid. And it's like some weird biological, emotional thing that happens where you're like, I love this thing more than life itself. And like literally right when Liberty came out, not even when I was pregnant with her, but after I had her, it was like, no, like this is my child. I would die for this. I would give up everything to protect my child.
That's true. She would, she'd let Larry die rather than Liberty.
But you know, I think that that's all parents. And my point is like, I don't think you can really understand it until you have a kid, how much you love your kid. And like in that moment, in that time, I forgave so much that my parents put me through conceiving, you know, of like, oh, they didn't do this right and they did that. And it's like, you know, it's like you kind of have this list of things you have. Then you have a kid and you're like, my goodness, this is how they feel about me though. Even though they didn't do it right, this is how they feel about me.
Right.
So anyways.
And then you might even credit them as you're doing diapers and taking them out shopping and you're doing birthdays and you realize, oh my gosh, my parents did this with me my whole life. And when you're a selfish little kid, you never think about it. You just resent a little bit and you notice what you don't like.
Oh, totally.
But then when you get older, you actually become sentimental and think, man, they did this all the time and I never even noticed it.
Yeah. So the new thing I noticed with Liberty is all of her girlfriends changed their parents' names to birth giver. And like we were in the car the other day and she's like, I changed your name to birth giver. I was like, excuse me? I was like, you can change it back to mommy. And she's like, or mama or mom or whatever you'd like, but not birth giver. I'm like, there's plenty of those out there. I cared for you. I hold your hair when you throw up. Like I comfort you when you're not feeling good. I was like, a mom is way different than a birth giver. I was like, I don't call you person that came out of me. And she's like, that's true. So it's like, but there's
100 ways this political correct spirit, this
Yes.
spirit tries to change language, to change meaning.
100%.
Well, like in the ding-dongs in Congress, that you're not allowed to use the word mother or father in the flipping house. You can't use mother or father there. They have agreements. You're not allowed to use that language.
And
What? It's madness.
And there's such covenant, there's such blessing in being a son or a daughter of a mother or a father. And so to your point, culture is constantly discipling the next generation. And the idea that it's like, I mean, you have to be eternally vigilant. You really do with kids these days of what they're consuming because they're being discipled in school, they're being discipled on television, they're being discipled in video games. And it's this whole other religion, the woke religion, all of that. They're constantly being discipled. And it's like that television or that video, that's the pulpit. That's the woke religion's pulpit. And so it's like you got to be so vigilant, especially as like Christian or conservative parents, to catch it when you see it and go, wait a minute, what are you saying when you're saying that? And when you talk it through with her, she's like, oh, that's not what I mean, you know?
I think about how hard it is for kids that don't have parents that can do that or single parents.
I know.
Blah, blah, blah. And that explains so much. But I'm hesitant. It's 23 minutes into the broadcast, and I meant to ask you why it is that our staff is all insisting on protecting the internet and going to and tapping in on ExpressVPN to be able to get other channels or stuff like that. Like when I go to Aruba, I go for with Annabelle, but I can't get any channels. But if I have ExpressVPN, can I get other channels?
You could, yeah. Well, actually, Chelsea, our producer, brought this to us, and so ExpressVPN is really designed to keep you anonymous online, like first and foremost, so that big data isn't collecting all the information it has on you, not adding to any more files.
Let me just ask you a question.
Okay.
What difference does it make if big data is getting? I'm always like, people don't like to have big data. So what if they know I'm a male. I'm 65. I'm a brilliant guy. I'm a nice guy. I mean, I'm a fairly good-looking guy for my age. I mean, so
Okay.
what if they know that stuff?
So humble too. I mean,
And in
humble.
touch with my feelings
Yeah,
and my feminine side.
Yeah. I think it's different for everybody in terms of their convictions on this. In many ways, we're commodities to big data, to things like Facebook or Instagram, because they take all that data they have on you and then they'll show you like targeted ads. So you're being marketed.
So what? You like targeted ads.
I do like
you
targeted ads.
You used my phone one day, and you know what I got? Shoes. I got women's shoes coming at me. I would have thought I was transitioning if I didn't know better. I got women's clothes, women's shoes, all because of you.
Yeah, I think you were like signed into my Google account or something like that. So but that's the point. It has all that data and it thinks I'm on your phone and it's like, hey, would you like these? Yeah, 3-inch heel. And so, yeah, I mean, it's up to you, but I don't like that. I like to be a little more anonymous. I like to keep my data private. But, if you got nothing to hide, to your point, I guess it doesn't really matter. I don't really have anything to hide either, but I just don't like the idea of.
All right, gentlemen.
Carl.
Do you have any opinions on this? Do you have any problem with government and other people being able to track your whereabouts, what you're doing, where you're going, what you're looking at, why you're looking at it?
Mr. Monin,
What's
please.
wrong with that?
I mean, again, it goes back to more personal preference. I mean, your phone's generally keeping track of where you're at anyway. You have to go in and turn off some settings for pretty much most apps just to make sure that it's not regularly keeping track of you. I don't personally have a problem with. I'm kind of in a similar position of Lance of like, if Facebook wants to know what websites I'm browsing, It's not private information. That's fine in and of itself, but. If you're at hotels or at airports or in other locations, like at a coffee shop, it's really not difficult if you're using their internet and you don't have protection, like a VPN, it's really easy for people to just hop on that network and see your information and then also be able to get like banking information or things like that.
Now
so
we're
that's
talking
more
about
of where
all
I'm
the
on board with
hacking
that.
that's going on. Now that makes sense.
Yes. So that's more of why I'm on that side. I'm on the same boat of like VPNs are great. But that's more of my reasoning as opposed to, I don't want the government to know exactly what I'm doing because if they want to know that I'm reading online articles, like sure, that's currently fine. Maybe in 10 years from now or 5 years from now or however long it takes.
That's right. When they find out that you were a Trump supporter, that's when the President Trudeau is going to have a problem with it.
Worse yet, you worked for Lance Wallnau.
What? Lance Wallnau? I'm not even Lance Wallnau.
Known Christian nationalist.
I'm Mike Lindell.
Yeah. To that point, it doesn't really matter what you're doing right now, or it does and it doesn't. Like you, as an American citizen, have a slight right to privacy, to a semblance of privacy. And with all this massive data mining, you don't get that privacy at all. So the ExpressVPN provides an additional buffer, just a little degree of separation. Also, I don't trust big data. I don't trust anything with big in the title. So if big data or big government or anybody wants to have access to that information, they can alter the data in such a way that it actually makes it seem like you are culpable or liable for some online activity that you might not actually be culpable or liable for. It's not that difficult to manipulate the data in that regard once you have access to it. So invest in yourself, your privacy, get you some ExpressVPN.
All right, so you want to go to expressvpn.com/Lance. And I think you get like 3 months. What's the deal on that?
I think if you sign up, you get 3 months free.
3 months free. Try it out.
Plus, Chelsea was telling me that a lot of these data companies, they sell your data. So like you're the product. We have a dollar amount value to organizations like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of that. And so, you don't want your data sold either.
Well, I want to jump back before we end this broadcast, which is very important. One final thought here, people.
Oh, I was just going to say to your original question that yes, if you're traveling or if you want to get like BBC shows and you'd like to watch Doctor Who, but you live in the States and you don't want to have to wait to watch it, you could get ExpressVPN, make it look like you're somewhere in Great Britain and then watch shows. Plus you get different shows on different platforms. So to your point.
That was the commercial I saw, which was I could be here and I'm restricted, but if I go on ExpressVPN, I have all these 9 other channels I could access. which for people that just live in the internet a lot, not a bad problem, but it's a real first world problem because, I go somewhere and don't get, like, if I want to see a Netflix thing.
Yeah.
not
Meanwhile,
think-
like Putin and Ukraine are like fighting it out. And we're
Meanwhile,
like,
Putin-
watch
back-
your shows on
Let me
ExpressVPN.
go back to the Putin and you. But by the way, if they have ExpressVPN in Moscow, they probably can be watching shows anyway
Well, or getting actual news,
or getting actual news.
like programs like this.
Yeah, like this, but not like CNN. I tell you what, I feel better doing that ExpressVPN with my whole staff. My millennials got me convinced this is where we got to go. You got to take a look at it. We're going to be coming back with you tomorrow. I'm going to be sharing with you Archbishop Vigano's powerful statement about exposing the World Economic Forum, Davos, and the European Union as the enemy of the United States. And boy, he's got a different take on Putin than you might imagine. You don't want to miss tomorrow's broadcast.
Thanks for listening to this Lance Wallnau broadcast. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure to subscribe and share the episode. See you tomorrow.